Welcome. Today we're going to compare and contrast the design and construction of two types of busway plugs. First is the Starline track busway from Universal Electric. The other is the Power Wave bus system from PDI. Right away you can see that the amount of parts required to construct and assemble the plug with an L2130 for the Starline system has very few parts, and the PDI plug has quite a number of parts and mechanisms that will need to get assembled, which we will show you over the demonstration. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is assemble the Starline plug, and the first step would be to insert the paddle into the enclosure and secure it. The paddle simply has wires with a plated copper stab that is soldered at the top and runs out the bottom. So pretty simple assembly there with no connection other than the soldering point there. Once that's secure, then the breaker will be installed into the box. Now that the paddle has been wired to the breaker on the line side, the load side will be connected to the L2130 receptacle. As you can see, the breaker is now wired up to the receptacle and mounted in the box, and the receptacle will just be secured to the lid and will be finished. Now, just to finish the assembly, the cover gets secured to the box. And that completes the Starline plug assembly. And we're showing the Starline track busway and the plug-in module that goes into it. The Starline track busway has a continuous access slot, aluminum housing, and copper conductors. The conductors are roll formed to accept the paddle, and the housing is also rated finger safe from UL. So we'll install a plug-in module into the housing now. You simply insert the paddle into the housing, turn it 90 degrees, which makes connections into the busway. Then you can secure the plug with the bolt that goes into the housing so that it just stays in place. It makes it unable to turn. And that's how simple it is to install the plug into the busway. Now we're taking a look at the end of the Starline track busway just so we can see how the paddle and the blades and the paddle engage into the busway. So we'll zoom in to take a look at that design. As you can see, the blade is between the roll form copper that's providing some spring pressure constantly on the blade. So all the blades are engaged for each phase and neutral into the copper bus bar. Next, we'll assemble the Power Wave bus plug. And to do that, we'll again start with the paddle and work our way into the enclosure. We won't go into the paddle assembly, but we will show you the paddle that goes into the busway housing. So the paddle requires a mechanism to actuate the fingers, which will press against the busway when it's inserted into the housing. Those connection points to the electrical connections to the fingers are a rotating assembly that goes around a fixed bar. So as you can see, the bar comes up and makes its way up through the paddle, comes down and makes a connection point there, and those fingers rotate around that fixed member with a spring that will return it back to its normal position when the paddle wants to be removed from the busway itself. The mechanism that drives the mechanism within inside the paddle is on an assembly that's the top part of the enclosure, and that assembly we will build into the that part, which will later be connected to the paddle. Okay, so we have the slider assembly now into the part, and you can see it moving there, and there's a lever that would operate that from the front side of the plug. So next we'll insert the paddle down through the assembly. And we'll secure that with the nuts that hold that paddle in place. Okay, now the paddle and the operating mechanism assembly is together, and you can see how the sliding the lever will turn the mechanism up in the paddle, which will then force the fingers out and keep them out with a plastic piece that will keep the fingers extended once in the position. Next we'll take the enclosure, and you can see the receptacles already mounted in the enclosure, and what we'll do is wire the load side of the breaker to the receptacle and then install that in the enclosure, and then we will assemble the paddle and mechanism. Okay, so we have the box together somewhat with the breaker and receptacle wired on the load side. Now we'll put the paddle assembly and wire in the top side of the breaker. The wiring from the paddle to the breaker has been complete, as you can see, and now we'll assemble the paddle mechanism and complete the assembly. To put that assembly on, the first thing to do is get the assembly lined up, and then you have to secure it with some very small screws that hold the face of that on and to the rear. So a little difficult task, but we can get those in and complete that assembly. Next we'll put the final two screws into the paddle assembly mechanism to hold that firmly in place. And then the last step will be to put the cover on over the breaker and secure it with 4 screws, and that will complete the assembly. And there we have the final bus plug for the Power Wave bus system completed. Today we have the PDI Power Wave bus system, and we will demonstrate the insertion of a plug-in unit into the busway. The power bus is an aluminum housing. It has 4 copper conductors. They're flat bars that run the length of the housing with a continuous access slot on the bottom. the paddle of the plug would be inserted up into the mounted busway system. Once it's fully engaged, the two screws will be secured to the side of the busway itself to secure that in place. Once that's done, the lever that turns the connection points into the busway is slid to the right. You can tighten that down, which will prevent it from coming back out or being moved accidentally. One of the key aspects of a busway system is how the plug-in attaches or fixes itself to the busway itself. So we're looking at the PowerWave bus system from the side with the plug inserted, and we will actuate the mechanism that turns the fingers on the paddle that makes contact with the flat bus bars on the side of the busway. And as we zoom in, you'll be able to see how the fingers are making connection to the bus bars.